You're listening to The Builder's Mindset with Mike DiGiovanni, presented by Amazing Mindsets. Hello, welcome back to another episode of The Builder's Mindset. We are so glad you're here. We so appreciate you showing up. We're coming up on a year now. We really enjoy doing this. We hope you find value out of it. Obviously, if you're listening at this point, you do. I think we're going to do a short episode today, kind of as a little bit of a follow-up to yesterday. This is a call to action, okay? If you are listening and watching, yes, I'm getting very close to the camera and the microphone right now because I want you, if you are a private home builder, particularly the smaller ones that are doing between 100 and 500 homes a year at a single division, or a total of that in a couple of divisions, call to action. It is time to up your game. If you don't up your game, you are about to go the way of the dinosaurs, okay? The current math is just starting to not add up. You know, we talked a little bit last week in regards to the cost per foot to build, and I gave you numbers. I've heard upwards of $75 a square foot in Texas nowadays, $100 for entry-level homes in Southern California. And so when we talk about the problem of big builders, look at your cost per square foot to build. If you're 150 up, 200, 250, 300, just do the math on your square foot. Do the math like we've talked about. If you're in a coastal community, take that number and that cost, divide that by 0.32, 0.33 to see what your revenue should be for that type of home. Or if you're not in a coastal market, divide it by 0.45. That's a good rough. It's somewhere between 0.4 and 0.5. And tell me if your cost to build is in line with your revenue. And if it's not, there's a couple of different things you could do, but I would say then you've overspecced, you've overdesigned, or you're not negotiating well. We've talked about this before. Like, it all starts with the architecture. Did you overdesign that? Are you overspecced? Do you have quartz countertops when you really just need an entry-level granite? Are you overdesigned? Your house has got way too much gingerbread on it. You got 10 and 12 pitch roofs. You got stone, covering, 60% of the front and 25% of the sides. You've got like more windows than, Trump Tower, and in your homes, your glazing percentage is so high that you're energy efficient. You get R60 insulation in your attic to offset that. So the current math doesn't work if you're not being competitive on a cost per foot. Now, I know there's a lot out there going to say, I can't compete with the big guys. And I would say bupkis. Why do I say bupkis? Because I would say is that I'll bet you, anecdotally speaking, this is just my educated opinion, not sharing anything that I know of specifically, but I will bet you that your big bigs, your Lennar and Horton, probably have a $2.50 to $5 a square foot per advantage over other large companies, over the Pulte's, over the Meritages, KBs, Tolls, MVRs, you name it, okay? I truly do believe that those two guys who build 80 to 100,000 homes a year, where Pulte is at 30, they're a scale of 3X. Do they build for a better cost? Yes, they do. And we'll do the math in just a second. And if you're in a market, let's say, where you're competing with Lennar, who's doing 1,000 houses a year, and a Meritage and a Pulte doing 700, 750 a year. And you've got, let's say, maybe a Toll who's doing 500. and you're doing 250, you might be at a 250 disadvantage to those guys. So you're a 5 to a 750 disadvantage over a Horton and a Lennar. And I would argue you're about a $2.50 to $3 disadvantage over the other competitors. Why do I differentiate those? Because don't focus on the fact that you might be $7 less than Lennar. Because I said, if you're more than Lennar, if you're 7 more than Lennar, then in that instance, I believe then your other big guys are 5 more. So what I would say to focus on is the fact that, okay, you're 250 off probably of the other big guys in the marketplace. So let's go back to that, and I might need a calculator here, but the 2,250 square foot house, right? Let's make numbers simple. Let's even say you're $3 a foot off, right? So that puts you at $6,750 total cost. So markup, all that other stuff, maybe you're 10,000 difference, okay? If you're within 10,000 of a public home builder, you're a local, you can, on a retail, you can work that all day long. That is so inconsequential in a monthly payment. And you can leverage and negotiate into that certain features and things that, negotiate with a trade partner, and you're not going to get as good a price as a Lennar or a Horton or a Meritage or a Toll. Well, you could probably negotiate a little bit better spec, so you've got a couple of things within that same price structure that you're going to be in because you're already paying a little bit more. And so I want you to really think about, if the current math doesn't work up, what are you doing to get there? But what it comes back to is, as we talked about last week, you have to take your current cost per foot, and you've got to determine what it is as a percent of your revenue of the homes that you're selling in existing communities. And if you're coastal, it better be less than 35%. And if you're non-coastal, it better be around 45%. If you're coastal or Western United States or Northeastern, and that number is more like 40% of your revenue, ding, 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 there's the low-hanging fruit. If you're non-coastal, you're Texas, you're Southeast, and that number is above 50% of your revenue, ding, 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 there's an opportunity for improvement, either in negotiating better numbers or looking at your product design or your specs and features, because you're over-specced, over-designed, or overpaying. You're one of those three. Are you over-speccing, over-designing, or overpaying? One of those three, okay? You better write that down, because that's just like, don't overpay, but start by not over-designing and not over-speccing, because that's 100% in your control, okay? Overpaying is in your control as well, but it also is requiring somebody else to give you a different price structure, okay? All right, fine. So, look, the land is what it is. We all talked about that. And there's other people out there who believe that the land run-up prices is what's the problem with affordability. And I say to that is not total bupkis, but I'm going to call BS on that, because it's definitely not the only problem. And in my opinion, it's not the major problem. All right. So you got to focus on your directs and your price and do that math. So here's my challenge to all of you. And this, if you're a division of a large public, because let me tell you what, as you know, like I've worked for 5 home builders, 3 publics, 2 privates. I've worked in 3 different markets. I've worked for, I've worked for some builders in multiple markets. And I will tell you this, there are some divisions of large public home builders that aren't run well. Don't have the best cost structure, don't have the best design. I'm not saying, I've never worked for Horton, so I don't know specifically, but Horton prides themselves on local control, right? So are you going to tell me that you believe that every single DR Horton, because they have a local division president, local purchasing team, and they're not a centralized purchasing and centralized design company, you're going to tell me that you believe like every division of DR Horton runs like a well-oiled machine? No, they've got some of theirs that struggle. Maybe that's one of you. Maybe that's in your market. There's some publics that are struggling. Why do I bring that up? Not that misery loves company, but because you can if a large public builder can have divisions that run well-oiled machines and ones that don't, at the top performing, and then also what I would say is there are public home builders whose margins are that have good divisions, great divisions that run well. You can do the same thing. And so what you just got to put your ego down, your ego aside, your preferences aside, and just do the math. What are my costs per square foot to build? And how is that as a percent of revenue of the homes I'm selling? And then don't just go run to your purchasing department and scream at them and say they stink and they overbought. Once again, like I said, is it over-designed? Is it over-specced? And are you overpaying? Or is it a combination of the three, which is often the case? So take a good look at that. The recap is here. Do a survey of all your communities that you're building and selling in right now. Look at your total cost, okay? And figure out what that is as a percent of revenue. And I would do it plan by plan at this place in time, not average community. Do it plan by plan for your base house cost. You can work on your option margins later, because that's a whole other thing it has. But just take your base sale price per home, per model, per plan type, and your base cost per plan type, and see what that math is. And then you look at it. Like I said, if you're in a non-coastal market, if that number is over 50%, big problem. Low-hanging fruit. If it's over 45, still got room to work, in my opinion. You want to get as close to 42 as you possibly can. If you're in a coastal market, if you're over 35, big problem. If you're over 32, still got some room to improve. Go look at that, focus on that, see where you end up, and we'd love to hear from you. Let us know where you fall, and feel free to reach out to us privately with a DM, because I know people don't like to put this publicly and air their dirty laundry, but I will guarantee you that out of the builders that are in the top 21, number 21 to number 10,000, I'll bet you there are lots of you out there who are in that category where you have low-hanging fruit when it comes to your design, your spec, or your current contract amount. Who's going to be honest with themselves? Who's going to put the ego aside and start making more money? Let me know. Reach out. We can help you get there. We can help create a path for you to get there. And we hope you have an amazing day. See you next week. You're listening to The Builder's Mindset with Mike DiGiovanni, presented by Amazing Mindsets.